health, we often break it into pieces: food on one side, emotions on another, hormones somewhere in between. But what happens when those pieces stop talking to each other? For many people, especially those living with PMDD or other stubborn health challenges, life can feel like a puzzle with missing pieces. Listeners, welcome to this beautiful episode of the Mindful Living podcast with your host Sana. And today I am joined by Camilla Brinkworth, a naturopath, nutritionist, and trauma informed healing specialist who has lived this puzzle herself. From battling anxiety and autoimmune arthritis to navigating PMDD, she found a way through plant based living, natural medicine, and deep inner work. And now she helps others not just survive, but truly reclaim their balance. So, this conversation is not about quick fixes or the general one size fits all solutions, listeners. It is about exploring how food, hormones, and emotional health intersect and questioning what it really means to heal, especially when the path isn't linear. So, Camila, welcome to the show, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation on this.
Thank you so much, Sana. Yes, I am too.
So Camila, in our last conversation, we explored around PMDD. Now, uh, you have actually lived through the debilitating effects of PMDD and then autoimmune challenges. Uh,
Mm.
so, if you can walk us through the moment you realized plant-based living and natural medicine, they could actually change the trajectory of your health.
Yeah, so I actually, when I suffered from PMDD, I was already plant-based, but plant-based nutrition itself actually managed to get me off antidepressants when I was in my early 20s. And within 2 weeks of going completely plant-based, so adopting a vegan diet, my arthritis that I had had for almost a decade, that was so debilitating at times that I couldn't even hold a pen, would do the washing up, and that just disappeared. I woke up one morning and I realized that the pain that had been in my neck for about 10 years, since I was 19 years old. I think I went, yeah, vegan at 27. Um, that just disappeared. I wasn't actually going vegan for the health benefits, although I had luckily been exposed to very, very healthy vegans, and done a lot of plant-based nutrition cooking courses and things like that. So I knew how to I knew that it was a wonderful could be a wonderful thing for health, and I had lots of amazing role models, and, I knew the kind of things I was supposed to be eating already, thankfully, but my incentive for going plant-based was more to do with animals and the environment, and the health benefits that I have received myself, through going plant-based and vegan, has just been extraordinary. So that really the decision to go plant-based, really drastically changed and improved my mood. It's yeah, like I said, got rid of my arthritis, my energy was just so much better. There really nothing in my life, didn't improve as a result of going, vegan, but it was, years down the line, when PMDD surfaced after, being in a very abusive relationship and managing to leave that. And, that really was the part that spurred me on to do the deeper emotional reparative work, and the family constellations and the rapid core healing, the deep trauma processing and ancestral healing work, which I absolutely love and has changed my life and now changes the lives of many of my clients too.
That's really inspiring, Camila. Because um, of course, skepticism is welcoming and natural here. Now, some would say, some listeners will think, okay, it that's really good to know that it sounds great for you, but will it really work for me? I mean, how do you address that kind of doubt in your practice, especially, plant-based living?
Yes, there's lots of people doubting plant-based living. Really, you only need to look at if you go to Forks Over Knives and look at their numerous success stories, and there are so many people who have conditions through going plant-based. So I'm certainly not alone. And like I said, I have, many of my own role models who've been living this way for decades and just absolutely thriving. We also have plenty of research that shows that people who either eat an exclusively plant-based or predominantly plant-based, whole food plant-based diet are really thriving in comparison to the rest of the population.
Mm.
There are many people who don't thrive on a plant-based diet, but I personally don't think it has anything to do with plant-based diets. I think that, well, there are a number of reasons. It's very easy if you aren't being very mindful of getting everything you need to be through your diet. It then you can develop micronutrient deficiencies, and we do see that quite commonly. It really does require a level of education on plant-based nutrition and mindfulness to get it right. But when you do get it right, it's just so unbelievably worth it. And for me, because my motivations were much, much bigger than myself, they were for the animals, for the environment, there was no way I was ever going to let myself not get this right. So I found out everything I could and I implemented it myself. And now I help other people, whether they're vegetarian or vegan or just wanting to eat more plants, and I help them make sure that they're getting everything right. And there are, some recurring things that I do see that people overlook, and some of the things that people overlook show up very quickly in terms of creating deficiency symptoms, and some things actually really become a problem over time. Um, so that's one reason some people might not thrive on a plant-based diet, the which has nothing to do with the adequacy of a plant-based diet. And then the other thing is that we have this idea that nutrition is everything. And I had this perfect diet that had helped me in so many ways, but I still suffered PMDD and panic disorder um at one point. And it became very obvious to me that you can have the perfect diet and lifestyle, but if you've got unresolved trauma that's running the show in your subconscious mind and affecting you at a really deep level, or if you're in a very unhealthy living environment, whether that means, mold toxicity, for instance, or an unhealthy living environment in terms of the relationships that you're surrounded by, there's no diet that you could possibly follow, no lifestyle you could ever follow that can just, you know, skim over that and mitigate the effects of being in that unhealthy environment or being in an unhealthy relationship.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with this. It's such a fact because why I'm saying it's a fact because there's a biological reason, and secondly, um, I've personally seen with my own experiences and with some of my friends' experiences as well. When we talk about autoimmune conditions, um, I've seen like alopecia. One of my friend, he was suffering from alopecia, and he got advised by doctor to not consume any uh, protein, like meat based protein. um but then, apart from this aspect, and he loves to have, especially chicken. So
Yeah.
whenever he had some emotional stress or some, family related tensions, it was very, very natural for him to kind of, indulge into it as a kind of, way to suppress or mitigate the stress.
Yes.
I mean, of course, didn't work well in the long way, and it's a very very tricky situation. So, uh, Camilla, I would like to ask that, uh, and because I bring in family into this now, what would you say to someone who feels their culture or family traditions make plant-based eating almost possible? Because when I resorted to a diet uh, without any non-vegetarian food, or I actually left uh, yeah, it was almost vegan, but then I completely resorted to a vegetarian diet, and it was a bit difficult for me to get adjusted myself or even justify myself, sometimes my family members, that why I am doing this. So what would you say to someone who are in this similar kind of situation?
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that the number one reason somebody doesn't stick to a plant-based diet is because of lack of family support and lack of social support. And, it's you're pretty much opting to be a minority, but you're opting to be a minority with a huge reward that is becoming available to you. You're most likely going to be so much healthier, so much happier, live longer, and just see life through a much more beautiful lens. And so personally, and I know not everyone feels the same way, but personally, I would choose all of that for myself over fitting into my culture, my society, my friendship group. And I do understand that that's very difficult for many people, and many people would not make that decision. Um, I do think that it's important to, so one thing would be it's very important to educate ourselves so that we know what we're doing, because you are going to get lots of questions from people, lots of questions that it's surprising that people still aren't ask, like, where do you get your protein from? Or, you know, uh, the vegan is so dangerous. And, if all you have to do is show them, show them the research and show that it's not. And, if it's done well, it comes with so many health benefits. Um, I think it's very important to try and create a community for yourself outside
Mm.
your existing community. And luckily, thanks to the internet, even if that's not immediately accessible geographically to you, there are people following a plant-based diet all over the world. And it's a really, really good idea to connect with them on social media platforms. Um,
Yeah.
I also think that it's important to know why you're doing it and to communicate that with your friends and family. And to be really honest with you, if your friends and family are not supporting you in doing something that's positive for yourself, then I would really ask if those are, I'd really wonder if those are people that I'd want to be surrounding myself with. Because I would hope that my friends and family would want the best for me. Um,
Mm.
and I would really hope that for other people too. And I know that's really hard. And that's where something like family constellations could come in and really, really help break through any patterns or ties that have kept people feeling as though they have to appease their family at the expense of their own health and happiness and their own freedom to make positive choices for themselves.
Yeah, yeah. I absolutely agree. And as you mentioned about research, I mean, did you do some of your own research, Camilla? Because I would like to know, did you find any kind of surprising, food, or any surprising element in there, or observation, that you were also kind of, you did not believe earlier, but after doing it, like, you really really like, it has been your favorite thing, something like that.
Yeah, definitely. I'll give you a couple of very, very basic examples, and then I would like to go into depth on one that's become a big part of my life. So, basic examples are, most of us are brought up thinking that we need meat for protein and
Hmm.
dairy for calcium, and it is just couldn't be further from the truth. All the essential amino acids are created by plants or bacteria, and it's really animals are just a middleman for us getting that protein, and there is absolutely no need for us to be sourcing that. Uh, so that's one thing. Another thing would be there's an idea that plants are an incomplete source of protein, but ironically, the only protein sources that actually don't contain all the essential amino acids are collagen and gelatin, and these are coming from predominantly from cows. So that's funny. The calcium as well, dark green leafy veggies, which are really our healthiest food that we could possibly want to eat. They're an amazing source of calcium. Um, so that's where I'm getting my calcium from. Um, and even most vegans don't eat enough dark green leafies. So highly recommend prioritizing those in the diet. Calcium is definitely something that we see a lot of vegetarians and vegans not, well, particularly vegans, not getting enough of, but that really comes down to not enough green leafies, not because they're not having dairy. So those are the more basic things. And the thing that really surprised me after thinking I knew absolutely everything about plant-based nutrition, because I'd spent probably thousands of hours studying it, plus a 4-year, 40-hour-a-week degree on health science, and including a huge portion of nutrition, um, was that, and pretty much, well, no one from my uni knew this, but the science is actually evolving. We had this idea that vegans needed to be taking DHA supplements from algae. That had become quite a recent concept, but actually, we're now finding that just because the blood levels of
Mhm.
DHA on plant-based sources aren't going up much, we we make more than enough DHA within the body for the tissues, and the DHA is required in the tissues, and it's preferentially there as opposed to in the bloodstream. So that's a big one. So more and more people so there's very compelling research from the University of Toronto that's going into a lot of depth in this, and actually showing that I can't say that this is true for pregnancy, breastfeeding, and certain neurophysical conditions, but I assume we will get that research at some point. But we can say that for the vast majority of vegans, they would be better off getting their omega 3s from flax, chia, when in a big enough quantity and prepared properly, or ahi flower oil, which is actually the highest natural plant source, or sorry, highest natural source actually of omega 3 of both the plant and animal kingdom. Um, and that's much preferable for multiple reasons than taking an algae DHA supplement, which is the trend at the moment. But yeah, the research, most vegans and most vegan doctors, unfortunately, are not familiar with this research yet. It hasn't made its way into the public forum, but it's been a big and interest area for me for the last few years. And even the largest dietetics association in the world.
Mhm.
They issue what's considered the gold standard of like recommendations for plant-based diets, and I think they bring it out every 7 years. And in their latest position paper, which is basically the gold standard for plant-based recommendations, they under omega 3s, they mentioned all of the research that I've been talking about for the last few years now. So um it's starting to make its way into the mainstream, but it's not quite there yet.
That's really compelling. That's really, really compelling. And you mentioned about flax seeds and chia seeds, and um I think they are so golden. And um in fact, I recommend it for my parents as well.
Oh.
Because I had gone to a dietitian, and she recommended that you should have this, it's kind of a mix
Mm.
of axes, chia seeds, that I think watermelon seeds. Yeah, that's what I remember. And it's a very, very healthy mixture. Of course, there's a certain quantity to be consumed, but I think it's really such a healthy mixture, and you can consume it with salads, or in fact, in India, when I make some curries or like vegetables, I put the seeds on top because that gives that crunchy feeling when you are eating it, and that
Yeah.
that is really, really, it really feels very hearty, like heartwarming meal to me.
Yeah. Absolutely, definitely. Yeah, I mean, so flax and chia are brilliant sources of omega-3, as is ahi flour, which is a
Yeah.
superior to chia and flax. Um, but yeah, we absolutely don't need fish. We do not need fish. We don't need the heavy metals they come with. We don't need the pillaging of our oceans that they come with. We don't need the microplastics and the other toxins that are found very heavily in fish and fish oil products. So yeah, we have some fantastic alternatives now, and we now know that plant-based eaters, aside from the caveats I mentioned, which we will probably know that we don't need them for need it for them either, but we don't need to be taking alpha DHA.
Mm. And they can turn out to be very tasty. I mean, I'm a big fan of polenta. I'm a big fan of cauliflower steak.
Great.
And I mean, I'm anytime up for hummus
Yeah.
and these salads. I'm like a fan of them. I'm like a fan of them. I really find that uh, I can eat just one single um serving of hummus in one go. I'm like I'm never full, even if I'm having two servings of that. I'm like a big fan of them instead of cheese or anything dairy based.
So good. Yeah. I think Indian and Middle Eastern cuisines are two of
Yeah.
the best for plant-based eating, definitely.
Oh, and before we wrap up, Camilla, I also would like to bring in PMDD into this. Um, mm, Now, some might argue that focusing on diet and natural healing places too much responsibility on individuals when PMDD, anxiety, they are systemic issues as well. So how do you balance personal empowerment with acknowledging the bigger picture?
I mean, that's quite easy. So I'm not sure I completely understand what you mean by the systemic aspect. Do you mean about how in society, for instance, PMDD is much more common in women who've experienced trauma? And so obviously we deal with societal, the societal problems of domestic violence and sexual abuse being rampant, which I strongly believe can be a significant contributor to PMDD. Is that what you mean by the systemic picture?
Absolutely. And also the uh, the kind of misconception around PMDD that it's just a severe, more intense form of PMS. It's just a hormonal imbalance. So just take some medicine and move on. I mean, there are a lot of misconceptions around it. So yeah, and
Yeah,
that.
I agree completely. Look, it's a tough one, but I think the priority for anybody who's suffering from PMDD is that they don't want to be suffering from it, and so whatever path they can take to not be suffering from it, has to be a good thing. I like to see from my own experience and from working with other women as well. I really believe that we have to address the trauma aspect of PMDD in combination with the natural medicines and the nutrition and the nervous system regulation part. And as with anything that we experience is very painful in life, I really believe that there is a hidden spark of light within that pain and that challenge.
Mm.
And so, if we go through that process of seeing it as an invitation for deep inner work and for maximizing the healthfulness of our lifestyle and the healthfulness of our relationships that we choose to surround ourselves with and the boundaries we set and things like that, then it's really an invitation for a huge upgrade in your life. So even though it feels horrific at the time, and my heart goes out to anybody who is suffering from PMDD, I know how rock bottom you feel when you're experiencing that. It is horrific. But if we can accept that invitation of doing the deeper work that is required to heal it at a deep level and for the very normal hormonal fluctuations that we all go through to not lead to the PMDD symptoms, then there's just such a great reward at the other end.
Mm.
The work that I had to do to get better from PMDD was really the work that changed my life, and changed the first how old was I when I recovered from PMDD? Probably be 33, I think. So, 33 years of my life I had lived with a real background anxiety that I didn't even know was there until it went through the PMDD work. And I had a very insecure attachment style. My Myers-Briggs personality type was INFJ turbulent. Now it's INFJ assertive. I'm very securely attached now. I have much, much healthier relationships and huge self-worth in, all aspects of my life, which just didn't exist before. So my life has upgraded through going through this difficult process. And if we just decide to try and switch the symptoms off with a pill or surgery, then unfortunately, we're not addressing whatever has caused this to begin with. Nothing that shows up in our life is accidental in my mind. And
Mhm.
really, the whatever we're given that's very challenging to us often carries that greatest spark of potential for a huge gift and potentially even our purpose in life.
Yeah, that is such a powerful, really hopeful um, uh, reminder, Camilla, because healing um, doesn't have to happen overnight or like a revolution overnight, but it can start with one small decision. Um, so, Camilla, if our listeners they would like to connect with you and explore more about the resources that you're offering, what would be the easiest way?
So the best ways would be if you're interested in support for PMDD, it would be pmddnaturopath.com. And if you were interested in support for plant-based nutrition, naturopathy, or rapid core healing or family constellations that aren't related to PMDD, then just camillaclaire.com. And you can always connect with me on Instagram as well, which is at Camilla Claire Naturopathy.
Super. I'll make sure to have all the links in the show notes. And Camilla, thank you. Thank you so much because your story, your journey, it really, really shows us that even when, everything feels like a maze, especially our health, there are ways forward that are compassionate, sustainable, and deeply human. There are options available out there. So, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing PMDD, the benefits of plant based living, into the limelight. I think it's such a responsible and um, such a beautiful approach, not only for us as humans, but for the entire planet, for the environment. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sana. Thank you for allowing me to discuss all of these really important things with you and be in front of your audience as well. And thank you to everybody who's taken the time to listen to this conversation. I hope it's been beneficial in some way.
Definitely, definitely. And to um, all the listeners out there, whether you are plant based, curious, or just exhausted with struggling with your health, please remember that you don't have to do it alone. And you don't have to choose between science and soul because Healing can hold both. So, to all the listeners, thank you for tuning in and take a moment after this episode to reflect. What's one small way you can nourish yourself today? That might just be the start of your own mindful living journey. Until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off. Thank you.